The world is on edge. And today, we're talking about something that, if it actually happens, would go down as one of the most seismic geopolitical moments of the early 21st century. Imagine this: Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, face to face across a negotiating table, eye to eye, talking peace, diplomacy, and perhaps averting the most dangerous conflict in the Middle East. Sounds almost impossible, right? Especially when you consider the bloody history between Washington and Tehran over the past 4 decades. But right now, that very possibility is making world capitals hold their breath. Trump has signaled repeatedly that he is open to direct talks with Iran's supreme leader, and Iran's officials are suggesting for the first time that they may answer under certain conditions. This is why the world is paying attention. We're living in a moment where war and diplomacy sit cheek by jowl. U.S. forces are positioned in the Persian Gulf. Iran is intensifying military drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which 1/5 of the world's oil flows. And behind that military posturing sits another flashpoint that has haunted global security experts for years: Iran's nuclear program. Right now, negotiations between the United States and Iran are indirect, taking place in Geneva or Muscat, mediated by third parties like Oman. But the real buzz in diplomatic circles is about direct talks between Trump and Khamenei himself. Nothing captures the imagination or the geopolitical stakes like two adversaries stepping out of the shadows and into a room together. This isn't business negotiation. This isn't trade policy or tariff talks. This is potentially peace, or the prelude to a larger war. To understand what's happening today, we have to go back in history. The U.S. and Iran haven't had formal diplomatic relations since 1979, nearly 5 decades. Back then, the Iranian monarchy was overthrown, and a theocratic republic was born under the leadership of the Ayatollahs. Washington considered Tehran an ally. Tehran felt betrayed by American support for the Shah. Since then, the relationship has swung from cold to icy to openly hostile. The 1980s saw the Iran-Iraq War, where the U.S. tilted toward Saddam Hussein's regime. Then came the 2000s, U.S. invasion of Iraq, Iranian influence expanding through proxy militias across the region, and whispered fears in Washington about Tehran's nuclear ambitions. By 2015, a landmark nuclear deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was signed between Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S., but that didn't last. In 2018, President Trump pulled the United States out of the agreement, reimposed punishing sanctions, and launched a policy of maximum pressure designed to strangle Iran's economy and curb its nuclear progress. The result? Iran accelerated its uranium enrichment, tensions spiked, and both sides edged closer to open confrontation. At various points, Trump has publicly threatened military action against Iran, even claiming the U.S. knows where Khamenei is hiding, warning of devastating consequences if Iran continued on its course. Then, in the midst of this standoff, something interesting happened. Trump began signaling a willingness to talk directly with the supreme leader himself. That's more than just diplomatic back channels or indirect envoy meetings. That's the kind of direct engagement that, historically, elites believed was almost taboo, unless prepared for months behind closed doors. And now, by early 2026, reports suggest that Iran's own leadership is at least entertaining the idea of talks under the right conditions. But before you imagine a scene of the two leaders shaking hands in a hotel in Geneva or Istanbul, let's be clear, this is not light summitry. This is a deeply fraught, high-risk move with enormous political consequences. Because the leaders involved are not simply negotiators, they are symbols. Donald Trump is a sitting U.S. president running again for office, trying to project strength, toughness, and global leadership. His political base expects him to be tough on adversaries, especially what many Americans see as a nuclear-armed rival. On the Iranian side, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is the ultimate authority in Tehran. More than just a politician, he is a religious figure with absolute power, and his legitimacy depends on resisting Western domination. In Iran's narrative, the United States has long been cast as the great Satan, a force to resist, not negotiate with. So when we talk about direct Trump-Khamenei talks, we're not just talking political negotiations. We're talking a collision between two political mythologies. In Washington, Trump's move can be framed as bold diplomacy, a last-ditch effort to secure peace before escalating to war. In Tehran, Khamenei has historically called such overtures deceptive, suggesting they are designed to pressure Iran into submission under the guise of talks. Yet now, subtly but unmistakably, there are signs that Iranian officials, at least at the presidential level, are signaling openness to negotiations under strict conditions, especially if military threats are dialed down. That brings us to the core tension of the moment. Is this truly a path toward peace or a strategic ploy? Because make no mistake, both sides have conditions and red lines. For the United States, Trump and his advisors insist that any agreement must address Iran's nuclear program, and in some cases go further, addressing ballistic missile development and Iran's influence across the Middle East. This is a position echoed by close U.S. allies like Israel, which has publicly stated that any deal with Tehran must include dismantling of nuclear infrastructure, not just halting enrichment. For Iran, meanwhile, the red lines are clear. Tehran wants respect for its sovereignty, no preconditions that treat it like a defeated power. Iran's leaders have said they will not accept negotiations under military threats and reject discussions that focus on anything beyond sanctions relief and mutual respect. So when you layer these positions together, you get a diplomatic dance that is incredibly hard to navigate, and it's not happening in a vacuum. Meanwhile, on the ground, Iran is flexing military muscle. Just this week, Iran's Revolutionary Guards began naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a stark reminder that Tehran is prepared to demonstrate its strategic capabilities if pushed. And behind the scenes, U.S. forces have been bolstered in the region, with the deployment of multiple aircraft carriers, a clear message that pressure and deterrence remain central to U.S. strategy, even as diplomats talk. This heightened state of military readiness is a shadow over every diplomatic word exchanged. So where does that leave us today? You have a U.S. president signaling openness to direct engagement with the most powerful, non-elected official in Iran, a figure who has spent decades resisting U.S. influence. You have Iran's leadership signaling conditional openness to talks, but rejecting Western dominance or coercion in any form. You have military forces poised on both sides, tensions in the Gulf at an all-time high, and global powers watching closely. This is not diplomatic window dressing. This is a high-stakes gamble, one that could lead either to historic breakthrough or to catastrophic escalation.